A select reading of the AskReddit thread, "What's something a poor kid would understand but would utterly confuse a rich kid?" I've heard this read by a robot, but I'd rather read it aloud, and maybe you'd appreciate a human as opposed to a machine, especially for this topic. Ground beef, noodles, and ketchup as a meal. Not something I've done. Still love that meal. 56 years old now. The meat was a real treat, though. I don't know how many people can appreciate the fact that even poor quality ground beef can be a treat. And for some, any meat would be a treat. My family had plenty of attempts to make hamburger helper without the aid of actual hamburger helper. It mostly became ground beef, some kind of noodle, and a ton of chili powder. Any flavoring helps. We had super sauce, 8 kids sharing about a pound of ground beef, a can of peas, and a chopped up onion mixed into a pot of flour gravy, poured over white bread. For the record, not supper. Oh, for the record, not super. I still do that even though I'm not poor anymore, lol. It's interesting how many people have grown up, and yet the things that they, from other people's perspective, the things that they suffered through actually become preferences. Beef is expensive though, so it's a bit of ground beef with eggs on noodles with ketchup. Ground beef and eggs I've done. Ah yes, spaghetto. Spaghetto. You have to laugh, you have to laugh. I have to keep a good sense of humor. For me, it was usually off-brand noodles and margarine. Ground beef was too expensive, and ketchup only came from packets you stole from the local McDonald's. Just a few changes, and have a simple, delicious, simple recipe. Pork mince, udon, ginger, and garlic, and spring onions is amazing. And you can do a lot of really wonderful things with ramen noodles. But it's still ramen noodles. You get to eat the leftovers, which the guests didn't eat, as your parents make the best items for your guests. Edit, it's not about eating leftovers, but you get to eat food which your parents normally don't give it to you. My Korean family was by no means poor, but man, do I feel this one. Yeah, sometimes it's not like guests are more important than children, but there are circumstances where it's too embarrassing to face having to shun your friends because you would invite them over but only be able to feed them the way that your family normally would be fed. So it's kind of like a treat for everybody when somebody comes over. It's a little bit strange, but morale is important for the poor as well. This is why leftovers are 10 times better than the first time it's made, IMO. A lot of people will use leftovers and reuse leftovers. Looking at price tags. Do rich kids even understand price tags, or do they throw money until they get the item? Seldom or never travel abroad. A lot of people in the US never travel abroad, in part due to how far you have to go to get abroad. As a kid, I only ever went to Canada once by car because we were already staying near the border in Vermont. We were pretty well off. I've never been out of the country and I'm 24, not even Canada. I've been out of the country once on a mission trip someone else paid for when I was 12. I got to ride an elephant through town, so that was amazing. Now, sometimes any vacation or any school trip leaves a lasting impression because it involves getting away, going someplace else, paying bills before the age of 18, paying bills after the age of 18, getting a job before the age of 18 to help pay the rent, even while at school or sometimes instead of school. Getting your paycheck and handing it over to your mom when you get home so the water and electricity stay on that month. never seeing your gas tank above the midway line, pushing oil changes until your car starts making strange grumbling noises at you, wearing the same 2 pairs of shoes until they fall to pieces and then visiting the thrift store for the next pair, being freaking ecstatic because tonight mom's buying pizza for delivery because it's your only birthday wish. Man, writing this all out is making me emotional. I had a great childhood though. My parents never let us forget we were loved, so being poor wasn't something we really noticed except when strangers or people at work/school treated us different for it. I do want to note something about kids is they can go through rather incredible hardship as long as they have good morale. One of the things that that will leave the longest, deepest scar on a child is feeling like they're in the way. And it is too confusing to actually navigate this properly. I guess I'm biased here, but my rich aunt and uncle made sure all 4 of their kids worked and paid for a majority of their own things before 18, including car insurance. Phones weren't popular enough yet. The logic was nothing is free. This is a perspective that certainly the super rich can't really impress upon their children. Some do, but it's very difficult, and especially because it's artificial, it's very difficult, and the kinds of peers they tend to have. So I assume if it's a car, then it would be legal driving age is 16 in some places. Edit, they had a lot of other expenses paid for, like college and a room. However, they had to work for food if they didn't want to live at home. They're really great cousins, honestly. Was lucky I didn't have to split my paychecks at my first job as a teenager washing dishes. I didn't have to pay for bills, rent, school, it was already covered. I could save it or spend it on whatever the hell I wanted, clothes, video games, going out with friends. Now that means that the parents were buying those things. All that time I had friends who did work to contribute towards their family's bills, and I have nothing but respect for them. It is an absolute blessing to have the option not to work if I want to focus entirely on university. I never, ever take that shit for granted. Some of my friends aren't as lucky. They are set back years on getting an education and achieving more because they are just trying to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. As I get older, I start to realize how adaptable and resourceful those friends are. They really can do the most with the very least and still be comfortable with it. They don't need anything but the bare minimum because they don't know anything else. Those are some life skills that I could really use right about now. It's interesting, nowadays a person can live poorer than they could in the past simply because entertainment is so inexpensive now. Although I suppose you can argue that, say, pre-internet, the dominance of computers, libraries were a thing. That's why they were more important, probably then than they are now. But now there's a great argument for how the internet should be trivially accessible for similar reasons, and having it available to shall we blanketly say the poor is probably extremely important for their morale. It's saying they, but our morale. Every kid should have some experience working and being responsible for some of their own expenses. Not like the family power bill or something, but their own stuff. My son has been working since 15. He's 17 now, and I've seen him mature a lot. Not always possible since there aren't always jobs, let alone jobs for a 15-year-old. This is why it can be very difficult having a minimum working age. And it's a very strange thing to think of, but few pressure an internationally operating business that has industry overseas, and you say, that's child labor, you can't do that. And the business complies and changes their rules, even though it's legal in that country. and decide to not hire people under that age because of their market pressuring them. They're taking jobs away from kids who now can't work to support their family. Strangely enough, that empathy that the market has to remove child labor actually causes the families to go even deeper into poverty. One of the worst memories growing up was of my mom and I waiting outside the power company's building before school. Once it was open, she would beg for them to not shut our electricity off. They would say there was nothing they could do, so she would tell me to deal with it and would storm out. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. It happened monthly. Yeah. Yeah. So this is now the kid feeling like they're in the way. That going to the nearest beach is a vacation. Isn't it? Bring the entire family, sure. Ah, okay. I live in Greece, so going to a hotel next to the beach is called a small vacation by some people. Yeah, okay, if you're staying, sure, that counts. Now I'm not poor, not wealthy. My family makes more than what my friends do, but our priorities usually end up costing us our vacations. Vacations and a lot of entertainment are almost always the first on the chopping block. We walked down a dirt road to the nearest pond. If mom had the day off in the summer, she would drive us to the lake, free fishing and swimming. I used to live 20 minutes from the beach in Cali, and we were broke as shit. But then the beach quickly became the literal only thing you do for fun. I remember going out and swimming, going to a local pool, and just that would be our afternoon. Nobody thought any different of it. So when you do drum up the money for the once every 5 years vacation, you go somewhere inland. I grew up on the poor end of middle class, and we alternated between camping and the beach. They were really great vacations. I must note that we also never went to any restaurants during vacations, and I was really surprised when I went on vacation with my husband's family and we went out to eat every night. It was one of the reasons why vacations are as expensive as they are. Also, if a person goes to a destination, the prices are inflated, like by a lot. Also because the price of running a business is a lot more expensive. Today I learned this isn't considered a vacation for rich people. I suppose it shouldn't have even been a question, but this is blowing my mind right now. Yeah, there are people that will go regularly and don't consider it strange at all. Getting upset when clothes, shoes, or other basic items are ruined. If I had a hole in my shoe or a stain or tear on my clothes, I had to live with it, at least for a while. I knew kids in the middle and upper classes that would get chewed out for stuff like that, but their parents would usually buy them new stuff right away. That wasn't the case for a lot of kids like me because it just wasn't possible. Most of the clothes I owned were hand-me-downs to begin with. Some of it was found in the garbage. I grew up with hand-me-downs and making do with what we had in a lower middle-class family with a lot of kids. My mom got mad at me for continuing to wear a shirt I liked after I accidentally put a little hole in it. It ended up disappearing after she did a load of my laundry. I still feel a little salty and confused. My friend borrowed my long-sleeve Nike shirt, newly purchased from the Salvation Army, and immediately put thumb holes in it. She just laughed as I flipped my shit. Fuck you, Tina. My mom whooped my ass over that. This thread is making me realize that maybe the only reason I wasn't poor growing up was simply because I was an only child. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but it was just me. You wonder why people are having only one child. Getting new clothes, but they're 8 years old. Setting little fires for fun. with a lighter you stole from the gas station. Buying food not for taste or preference, but for the price point and how filling it is. I can totally relate to that. Best judge is calories or protein per euro. I'm waiting for one very specific comment on calories. Watching the rest of the class go on class trips or vacations while you stay at home and or work. Oh man, that one hurt to read. I always went on field trips and had amazing memories and moments. I can't imagine a kid having to stay behind due to cost. But at our school, we had a subsidy program that even if parents couldn't pay for trips for their kids, the school would be able to help assist. I don't think this was ever abused either. Different times. Going to a school that even offered this in the first place. I had no idea this was even a thing until I was in my 20s. Wow, that's a neighborhood and school thing then. In my country, the kids have to work together to gather enough money for their trips. Sort of how Girl Scouts sell cookies in the US. That way everyone could go. When I was in school, the 6th grade class went to DC every year. It was something every younger kid hyped about with friends. In my overly sheltered mind, I didn't realize that these trips cost money out of parents' pockets. I don't think it was ridiculously expensive, but it definitely was for less fortunate kids. Get to be a 6th grader and I find out I can't go, along with a handful of other kids. And now everybody knows. So there we were, this small group of disappointed kids trying not to feed on each other's negativity for a week, waiting for our parents to get back. Waiting for our friends to get back. We got to goof off and do coloring assignments, though. Pity art. Not telling your parents about the trip, or telling them you don't really want to go because you know they would make a lot of sacrifice for you to go and you don't want them to. Recently told Dad that I didn't even bother mentioning half the camps and excursions to them because I knew we couldn't afford it. He yelled at me and told me it wasn't my choice to make and I shouldn't have had to make those decisions, and thanked me for making the choice. I will never tell them. They still think I didn't want to go to summer camp and that I didn't get accepted into that great college program. They still think I changed my mind about wanting to go on an exchange student program and to private school. Shit, the Alabama public school I went to, if you don't have the money, you go to the library with the exact same assignment as in school suspension. Went to get up to grab a book, was told I had to work. I said something to the effect of, what? So people whose parents can't afford field trips just get punished for being broke now? Cool, I'll let my mom know. Changed nothing. Apparently it's still like that for the elementary/middle school kids here. My daughter's class had some ridiculously expensive class trips. Space camp was something like $400 a kid, and the international trip they're planning next year is just a hair under $3,000 per kid. Both trips are optional, but well over 100 kids went to space camps, which is a healthy fraction of her class, and they've already had 30 kids sign up for the $3,000 trip. Talk about income inequality. We have a huge percentage of students on free/reduced lunches at school, but at the same time, we have kids going on optional $3,000 field trips. It's insane. I had to scrimp and save as an adult to go away for a week at something simple. Sounds like my high school. It was the only one at my city's downtown, so you had kids that had parents that were doctors and lawyers and other professionals, but also a lot of inner city kids. Wait, schools don't pay for class trips? Why would they? I'm also shocked. Our school is small and rural, but every child is included in field trips. The parents just sign a waiver, and end list and emergency contact for each trip. We just tell our parents. Like, sometimes you don't even know when you're rich. I once paid for my friend to go on a field trip because I didn't want to be without my friend, and I felt horrible because the money she had was for her lunch, and she could only pick one. So I paid for her to go so she could still enjoy the trip with everyone and still eat lunch. Which is also a very strange impact on morale, to have one friend who's richer than the next and wants to help. I remember coming home crying after finding out how much my band trip would cost. I was so grateful in high school to be given a scholarship to go on this big trip with my AP class. Don't know what that is. I only learned after graduation that the teacher paid out of pocket for me to go. Wow, where do kids go on a class trip when one student doesn't? In my case, it was everyone or no one, and I got shit on it. I got shit for it from the class. That's really bad. My school had a trip to the US at the end of our pre-exam years, which was for many kids considered to be the dividing line between middle school and high school. You don't have separate schools for these. What sucked is that it cost about £2,500 to £3,000, so thus is completely unaffordable for poorer kids in the area. That's a ridiculous amount of money. I remember lying to my mom that I didn't want to go on a trip because it would have cost money, and I didn't want her to feel bad if she couldn't let me go. It still stings a little bit because I know that it might have been my only chance to travel like that, certainly with all your friends and classmates. That was me during class field trips. I had to hang out in another classroom because my mom couldn't afford the $20 for me to go. Okay, let's switch topics. Oh my, that is a lot of... So, where do you go this summer? Oh, okay, this is long. Feel you, I am so fortunate. I grew up in middle class, but disabled. Little kid, I loved my mom, always was... But disabled. As a little kid, I loved my mom. She was always a parent who went and helped on class trips. Again, extremely lucky. Shifted in 6th grade. Mom, I apologize, I can't read that. What it is like to eat spaghetti for over a year and a half straight. Other than my birthday, that is exactly what I've done and am doing. I hate it. I hate it so much. That's current. I'm no expert at being broke, but you should probably get some rice or something. The problem is when certain less expensive food over the long run is actually an investment that somebody poor enough can't afford. Why does that happen? I have a pantry filled with noodles I got for 30 cents a pound. Just been working my way through them rather than buying any other food. My grocery bill is non-existent, but damn am I sick of noodles. Buying in bulk when things are cheap is common, especially if they're not perishable, and sometimes even if they are perishable. Skirting the line if it's a canned good. Fry baked spaghetti for minimal variety. I didn't know that was a thing. You could do a bunch of different things with those noodles. Break them into tiny pieces, use them in a soup. Make Alfredo sauce and add some broccoli. Broccoli's expensive. Make a knockoff chili five-way like Steak and Shake. And this person has recipes. My dad used to make refried spaghetti. I just realized I'm so poor I don't recognize the word polenta even after eating vicariously through Food Network channel. I currently don't know what that is. Do not like this browser / website put together. Okay, field trip. Okay, apologies. Eggs and rice. Pretty cheap, and if you have a little time, easy to cook and mix with almost anything. Filling and healthy-ish too. Living on a budget at the moment, although I guess nowhere as severe as you. And advice will come. When I was a kid, we were so poor we survived off of instant pancakes and cup of noodles for a few years. It sucks. Keep working hard, man. You'll get through it. The reason my husband can't eat spaghetti today. For me, it was macaroni and cheese. Can't stand the stuff now. Doing house chores at 10 years old. Isn't that normal? Yeah, you started doing chores at 10. I was doing some chores when I was like 3 or 4. New means different, not unused. When you're getting new clothes, they are used from family or a thrift store. One kid's gap is another kid's goodwill. And believe it or not, it can be quite engaging to go and shop for used things because they have a significant amount of variety, and much of it is brand name, a really good brand name that one couldn't afford new, like ever. New to you, not fresh off the rack. My cousins are upper middle class, and I went shopping with them during one of the only times I spent the night at their house. Not only were these 12-year-old girls astounded that my mom only gave me $10 to spend while there, they couldn't at all understand why I was checking the prices on everything we saw. Their parents just bought them whatever they wanted most of the time. About right? I recently got a new phone. One mate, who has a bigger room than my unit and a pool out back, immediately starts asking if it's an Android or an iPhone. It's a $30 supermarket phone. It just happens to be newer than my 3-year-old $40 supermarket phone. I didn't grow up poor, but I had an older brother and a lot of cousins, so sharing clothes. Till my early 20s, I found new shirts to be intolerable. The seams were just so scratchy if the shirt hadn't already been washed 400 times. A wealthier friend of mine taught me the value of calling things vintage when I was in middle school. They aren't Salvation Army clothes anymore. They're vintage pieces. I appreciated that. Wow, nothing is as embarrassing as a classmate recognizing their shirt that they donated and announcing to the rest of the kids exactly how poor you are. Oh, French has the word, I can't pronounce these correctly, neuf and nouveau, to signify the two different meanings of new, brand new or new to you. French is interesting. It also has libre and gratis. The thrift store is great for clothes even if you aren't poor. Wearing a pure cotton Calvin Klein suit jacket right now, paid $6. It looks great. Anything similar at the mall would be polyester and about $500. A guy I met in college wanted to burn all of his clothes that weren't black in some sort of statement. I was offended and ruined his dramatic gesture by going through all of the clothes he was going to burn and salvaging anything that might be the right size for me or anyone in my family. My dad wore that brown jacket for a while after too. I still get jeans from rummage sales. Brand new ones are too expensive. Having to really shop around to find something that actually fits. We could afford to draw the line at underpants, brand new underpants, everything else used. My mom also refused to let us wear holey underpants. If she came across a pair with a noticeable hole while folding laundry, she'd stick her fingers in the hole and rip them in half. Start from standards. That game where you hunt for change down the back of the sofa so your mom can buy cigarettes. Wow, oof, been there. Birthday money occasionally too. Imagine knowing that there might be and suffering for a while in the hopes that when you do go through the couch to look for change, that you will find that, and waiting for a special occasion to actually do that. Or going down to the grocery store and buying food with food stamps that gives you 90 cents in change so you can buy smokes for your mom. They used to let you do that. It wasn't my mom, it was my friends. She was pretty worthless and refused to get a job. He hustled as much as he could, but she really held him back a lot. I'm not sure who that person's talking about. Sugar sandwiches for dinner. Butter, sugar, and bread. We thought it was like dessert for dinner, but my mom told us recently it was because we didn't have any food. For us, we had butter and sugar toast for breakfast, since my dad needed the milk for coffee. And we were out of peanut butter and jam. Brought it to school for lunch a couple times too, though normally the we're out of food lunch was jam or plastic cheese sandwiches. My parents always managed to find something for dinner, even if it was just a grilled cheese sandwich each. I had a spell in college when I used to eat popcorn sandwiches. Now, maybe college stories should be kept out of this. I'll try to skip those. I loved these growing up. Didn't usually eat them as a meal, but as a snack or dessert. Didn't realize until I was an adult it was because we always managed to have food. Because while we always managed to have food, junk food and snacks were often beyond our means. And they should be omitted from anybody who's struggling from their that should mean that is an expensive kind of entertainment. Using food as entertainment is not good. That money could be folded into herbs, which will change lives. It sounds very strange, but soup kitchens that also give herbs would be a strange way to change lives in very very simple ways. And with a little teaching of how people can use that for doing things. I'd give curry personally. It's a universe. Just throw it in whatever. It tastes really good. At least different. My mom went the extra step and put cinnamon too, called it cinnamon toast and baked it in the oven. Best stuff ever, if you can afford the electric bill. I'm now realizing that I'm one of those rich kids. Oh, good. When I was a small and nimble child, my father would slip me into the vents of his client's house to scare the rats out, whereupon my siblings would be waiting to bludgeon them to death with the family soup ladles. We were a whole family of ratters. We lived rats, killed rats, and when times were rough, ate rats too. I'm not sure I believe that. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to. Back where I'm from, we still have to heat up bathwater on the stove in that neck of the woods. Yeah, but that's means, not necessarily poverty. Or maybe it's both because they live there. Yeah, white bread toasted with butter and garlic powder equals poor man's garlic bread. Isn't, I mean, with a little bit, again, a little bit of dried herb or something would change that. Would change a lot of people who do that. My parents would splurge and buy hamburger buns for it. Yeah, we still do that with leftover hot dog buns. How to mod the graphics down in games. Like edit software settings so you can still play a game on like below the minimum that's even supported by the configuration in the game. Doing without. Most rich kids never have to contemplate what it is like being without food or living in a cockroach infested unsafe hellhole before. How to make Kool-Aid. Never could figure out how to get a cup of sugar and 2 quarts of water in that tiny package. Okay, I needed a little bit of happiness. The guilt versus gratitude relationship fight you have when your friends share their food with you. We mentioned this. Because on one hand, you never have enough money to buy enough food to be fully sated. So that extra from your friends is awesome. But on the other hand, you understand how awful it is not to have enough food at lunch. You don't want to put your friends in that position when they're also fairly poor. Becoming wealthier as an adult now, nothing felt better than paying back a kid who used to give me peanut butter and jam sandwiches. Those were everything at the time, and he didn't mind, but I was guilt-ridden. Milk was in the pantry. Carnation instant. Never going to the dentist before. Relatable. First time I ever went to the dentist is when I joined the Navy. Group daycare. All of the poorer kids at my elementary school all went to the same group daycare when they were preschool. Kids with richer parents either had a stay-at-home parent or had their own personal babysitter. A stay-at-home parent? That's a thing? How? Isn't that a relative? Genuine story. My son's friend, who was about 10 at the time, didn't know how to wind down his window in our car. He had always used electric windows. If cable and Wi-Fi are a luxury. Cable is a luxury. Cooking everything, including pizza, from scratch because restaurants and pre-made food are too expensive, and they are. On the rare occasion food was purchased from a restaurant, it was either because my father was out of town, or we were buying leftover cold chicken, not the freshly cooked hot chicken from the local chicken shack. Waiting around in a laundromat. You don't want your clothes to be stolen. The take a penny, leave a penny honor system. In Canada, we don't have pennies anymore. And just the other day, I saw that it had been turned into take a nickel, leave a nickel, which I was extremely happy to see. I don't physically use coins anymore, but I would have contributed to that. Using the last bit of ketchup and using ramen noodles without the flavor packet to pretend to have a decent meal. Yeah, it's hot and might have some taste, but or ketchup, mustard, and relish packets with hot water, like soup, and stale crackers. Looking forward to your older brother growing out of his old clothes so you have something different to wear to school. Lying about where you live. Oh yeah, also having to take responsibility for crimes they have committed. They call it intermittent fasting by not eating breakfast, but that's pretty standard to me how I grew up. Not eating breakfast or lunch or dinner because there was no food. Alternatively, just not eating school lunch because it's disgusting and being too lazy to pack your own. Racing shopping carts in the strip mall parking lot where your mom has happy hour beers at the bar. Bread for hot dog buns. Poor or Australian. The idea of using like separate kinds of bread for different kind of activities, that's um, that's strange. Being impoverished enough, you've just used the regular one kind of bread for all activities. Coming home to school stinking because your parents couldn't pay utilities that month, as if you chose to be gross. Parents borrowing birthday money to help with bills or buying food and toiletries. Love them to death. We've always worked hard for me and my sister. Oh, and not having health insurance. This is an American. Putting water in shampoo bottles to make it last longer. Putting water in soap containers. I don't know what level mix you're talking about, but there is no sense letting the coating inside the bottle go to waste. Add a little water, shake it up, and let it settle to get at least 4 or so more washes out of it. Being very careful how you squeeze the toothpaste tube. In my experience, casseroles. Mystery casseroles. The difference between Medicaid and Medicare. I'm not even rich, I'm just middle class, and I still have no idea what the differences are. I also wouldn't know how to fill out a government assistance application form. Medicaid is aid for the poor. Medicare is care for the elderly. That's how I remember. Snitches get stitches is only taught/learned in the ghetto. Yeah, no, it's not. They just call them tattletales instead of snitches. Going to the library to use the internet. Buying whole milk, then adding water to it to save money. Using your clothing as first aid items, such as a sweatshirt being a splint wrapping. Also eating the common leftover food items. You can't be that much of a picky eater if there are leftovers. Riding your shitty, undersized, broken bike to school because your parents are busting their ass at a job they hate just to barely pay the rent. No brand name snacks being shared. No brand name anything, really. I was always jealous of my friends who had fancy snacks like Dunkaroos or Gushers, since I only ever got the Kroger or Walmart brand snacks, and only if we had extra food stamps left over. Being able to buy the good snacks for my kids makes me feel like I have accomplished something in my life. I remember when we would go shopping for school clothes, it was at Walmart or Kmart, and it was always the sale items and one size up so we could grow into it. And shoes at least an inch too long. Fried bologna, because we eatin' fancy. Spam. With the red skin on the outside. Hot dogs and beans. New. We weren't hungry by any means, but I often wonder how close we were. Not sure even mom or dad went hungry to make sure we had food. By the time my sis was born, had a good job, so probably not. We were down to the country for a family reunion and fixing bologna sandwiches while some others were warming barbecue. My aunt said, "They're eating higher on the hog." And I remember one birthday when mom told me they couldn't afford toys. January birthday. So I think I probably got quite a bit just as at Christmas. And they have bought me some books. After I opened them and assured her it was fine, it might have been 4 or 5, so not like I could really understand us being broke. Then she gave me 2 more packages of action figures, but big ones. They ended up being my favorite toys of childhood. I even looked them up recently. Pulsar, the ultimate man of adventure, and Hypnos. The combination birthday Christmas presents. That the next excursion with the school is not too expensive to be able to go and have fun with your friends. I remember I was acting like, that's for kids, I don't go do that, but I wanted to go, but I couldn't. Being worried about starting the school year without the books because they've changed them and they're not like last year's and you need new books and they're very expensive. This isn't a college thing, is it? Not saying where you live because you're ashamed to live in the worst building in town. Not being able to invite potential friends over because you're ashamed of your neighborhood or house or home or room. Not being able to buy the new jacket or hoodie that everyone has. And if you're from a rich town like me, it's 15 times worse because for them, rich is like normal. That next excursion with the school is too expensive to be able to go and have fun with your friends. Okay, so that's a repost. Old scratchy army blankets. I had some poor times better at my teenage years as a kid. When you eat bread with canned pate, because it's cheaper than the butter where I live, and give some to your dog to have a filled stomach. Yeah. Yeah, my dog was annoyed with dry food, so she had some too. Most kids make sure to save your allowance. Poor kid / rich kid. What's that? Having like 50 things of Oreo whipped cream. I don't understand. I don't understand. My favorite playground that was safest was the laundromat. A kiddie pool is a pool too. It's not a lifeboat or a foot bath, it's a pool. Being weirded out by fresh peas because you've only eaten canned all your life. I was a poor kid who was lucky enough to go to a good high school. Downside of that was growing up next to entitled brats. I've seen a girl throw her brand new gold iPhone across the room and not bat an eye because her parents would buy her a new one. Sure enough, the next time I saw her, she had one. These are the same kids that crash the new cars they get for their birthdays, get manicures, facials, and eyelash every week, despite never working a day in their lives. On the other side, I was scared when I ripped the strap off the backpack I had been using for 4 years. I sewed the damn thing up because I didn't want to stress my mom out with having to find a new one for me. I used it for 2 more years through college until it finally kicked the bucket and I was able to get a new one. Um, I knew a girl who had 6 cars in the year after she got her license. I know she crashed at least 2 of them. They were all Mercedes and BMWs. Low-key think it was her parents laundering money, but I can't confirm anything. She doesn't think she's privileged because she's always broke. Her parents gave her something like $900 a month. While in high school, when she was living at home with a nanny to make her food and do everything for her, and she managed to spend it all on clothes and Uber Eats. I had to convince her not to throw her phone off the school roof because she wanted the iPhone X. I just, I just, I just, I just wanna, okay, that, what? 14-year-old driver that gets, 14-year-old kid gets a license and gets a car. And they say it's his learning car. Wow. Okay. Using the shitty bread ends as hot dog/hamburger buns. Being able to save change means that times are decent. Also finding your piggy bank empty because your parents were short on bill money. Having to lend dad my debit card because his bank account is empty. Saving trash. Rich people don't bother with food scraps or the boxes things came in, because why would you store trash in your fridge/closet instead of getting rid of it now? Rinsing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. And this is why I was reading this in the first place. Having sleep for dinner. I remember seeing Ma doing this once. I asked her why. She told me it helped her keep her figure. From there on out, I thought she was just trying to keep slim. When I was a kid, our birthday present was getting on the meal plan at elementary school for the month. Our gift was school lunches. I remember being so stoked about it. I also remember feeling so ashamed when my 4th grade teacher sent a note home about me not having anything to eat all day. I'm a white kid from suburbia. I didn't even have it rough. We just didn't have enough money for food all the time. And people complaining because they live in the first world. Oh, many, many people complaining. And the old ramen diet. Every time you get a little bit ahead, an extra $100 or so, and being able to relax and breathe a bit. Next day, something goes catastrophically wrong with the car, or an appliance, or an unexpected late charge on something you forgot about. It never ends. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's expensive to be poor. You know, believe it or not, that's actually right in the strangest ways. Had this discussion with my bank. I got an overdraft fee because my insurance came out earlier than I expected. March bill was 3 days early thanks to February. And I had paid a bunch of smaller bills. Electric, gas, food. They charged me $280 in overdraft fees. I was short, but not by much. So how did that count to $280? I got billed $90 per attempt for PayPal to, without permission, pull money out of an account that I specifically kept empty because I would push it into a credit card to pay off debt. And so it didn't work. And I contacted my bank saying, what? And 2 days later, PayPal did it again, pulling out another $90. Like, that's what my bank would charge me. And the bank then said no, that they wouldn't do anything about that one. They were very nice about the first one, though. It's like mechanisms kick in for reasons that cannot be predicted. And in that case, it was because the PayPal interface for making a purchase went from the thing that had the money to the thing that didn't have the money because I clicked the wrong button, and a cascade of absolute holy hell. And that was a great birthday present. Instead of buying the thing, I couldn't buy the thing, and I had to go through hell. Well, when my account was positive, I have $300. I paid the $89 electric bill, the $65 gas bill, and then me and my wife went shopping, which, when poor, means going to every single grocery store to get all the coupons and deals. So the $100 of groceries are actually at about 6 different stores. Then the insurance came in. This bill was $250. I'm explaining. Overdraft fees are such a con. For me, it seems like a constant cycle of miracles balancing out catastrophes. At the end of 2018, I was saving up for a decent car since I was driving a piece of junk. Saving up because the piece of junk might die at any moment. I also lived in a trailer but got the opportunity to move into a much better house for barely any more per month. Well, the trailer had been in poor condition when I moved, but none of it was documented. My fault. But my landlord charged me up the ass for repairs and completely annihilated my savings account in the process. It was super depressing, just barely surviving the move and being able to pay the power bill since it was winter. A couple of months later after the move, somehow my position was just better. Then suddenly I was driving to meet some friends and got T-boned. My car was totaled and the insurance payment was $1,000 more than I bought it for. That made the difference of finally being able to buy a better car, which was super lucky. Overall, I'm now at the same bank balance as before I started saving for a car a year ago, except now I've got a good car and live in a nice house instead of a dumpy trailer. I can still get grumpy about money from time to time, but man, there were a few months where I'd wake up in a cold sweat at night, having nightmares about that moving process. I've rarely ever felt that helpless in my life, like as if my bank account had a free to whoever has an excuse to charge me for something sign on it. Just had this, literally losing a money battle at work. Finally got paid for some jobs and was able to pay bills. Came home and the toilet was leaking into the basement. Let out a breath when a coworker friend said he used to be a plumber and could easily fix it for me. The day after he fixed it, I got home and for some reason the freezer was leaking water next. It's like the world is trying to keep me in debt. My entire identity revolves around food. I use my spare fun money on food now. I give gifts of food. I take friends out to eat. I give people their favorite snacks and candy bars as little surprises. We never had enough as a kid. We went hungry every damn day. And now I express myself through food. I'll bring friends dinner. I'll bake people's favorites. I'll bring my coworkers entire casseroles. I'll take huge pots of soup to our neighbors. I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about how important the availability of food is to me. I have an 18-year-old coworker that just doesn't eat lunch during break for a 12-hour shift. So I started packing twice as much and I feed her the extra I bring. I just want all my friends and family to be full, to never have to feel hunger like my family did, like I did. I don't want that for them. Growing up, my friends nicknamed me Food Stamps because I was always bringing the food and snacks. I loved being able to buy my friends a solid meal. Many took advantage, but I didn't care. Even as an adult, feeding people is important to me. In my office, I have a snack drawer filled with nuts, granolas, cracker, fruit snacks, etc. I also keep a bowl of sweets where everyone can grab and go. It's a nice pick-me-up during the dull part of the day. There is always someone that skipped lunch or forgot breakfast. I was adopted at birth by an upper middle class family. I have never known financial struggle, nor do I ever want to. I don't deserve to eat any more than anyone else. And the fact that I was just born and got lucky isn't fucking fair. Life's not actually fair. I hate that you knew hunger, true hunger. I will never know or understand, but I don't want anyone around me to ever feel hungry while I am around. I have things to say. Being really young and getting excited about the power cut, lighting candles, etc., when it really was because we couldn't afford electricity. My wife had blanket parties with her siblings when the heat went out. The whole family eventually snuggling up with each other. The kids never knew they did this until much later when they discovered it was because they didn't have cash for gas. I remember sitting on the curb at night reading by streetlight. I was probably 8 or 9 years old and already needed to read in order to get to sleep. I am 27 years old and have always wondered why the power never goes out as much as it did when I was a kid. This was fucking it, I never even knew. One of the times I knew it was because my parents hadn't paid the gas bill, but I thought they'd just forgotten out of absent-mindedness, and I kept thinking that until a few minutes ago. I grew up very comfortably and have really fond memories of doing the same. We had all our candles and some flashlights, and we had this shelf of board games we'd bust out. For a few years, the power would go out to whole neighborhoods, at least a couple of times a year, and it was always board game night, or reading stories to each other. This is the first time I've considered others having that same experience for different reasons, but I'm happy our parents helped make it a fun experience for both of us, at least for a while. How bad it feels when a non-poor kid, even up to adulthood, mentions something expensive casually, or worse, makes a big deal out of you never doing it, like flying, going to another country, going to Disney World, or Disneyland, I suppose, going to a hibachi restaurant or fancy steakhouse, doing camps/programs that cost money at school or during the summer. I'd like to add sleeping on the floor and or without a real blanket, not by choice. I was told at like 5 years old that Santa doesn't exist and Christmas has a budget. Every term, our school would do a thing called Scholastic Books. It's like a catalog of books and other educational things that parents can go through, pick put what they think their child will like, and order them. The school gets a percentage of the sales, and the kids get an education-filled Christmas unboxing every term. Almost every kid in my class would get at least one thing, except me. So, just sitting in the back of the class watching other kids showing off their new stuff to each other. One year, a kid left before the order came in, and the teacher gave his book to me. Rich kids will never know the feeling of being poor, having it noticed, and not being shamed for it. It was the only time I ever got a book from Scholastic, and I still have it. Side note, I am all grown up and am not super poor. Every term, my mom and I pick a class at the local primary school and buy books for every student that doesn't have a book order in that classroom. It's a mixed school, half rich people and half poor people living in a trailer park struggling to get by. Relaxing in an empty parking lot in your friend's car is a typical night out because nobody has anything at home and don't want to be there anyways because it's too stressful. Coming home, staying out at school extra late so you don't have to come home for a while. Struggle meals. Love my mom. No matter how hard times got, she always found a way to whip something up in the kitchen. My fave was fried tortillas with refried beans, sometimes with cheese. Cheese is expensive. Coming home to the gas, light, or water shut off. That shame when your parents have to tell the cashier to take items off because they didn't have enough. Water in the shampoo detergent. Collecting all the change in the house to cash in at the local grocery store. Keeping coins in the cup holder in a car and using that. Knowing your mom's social security number by heart at 12 because you had to call to set up payment arrangements for the utilities while she worked evenings. My God, the groceries. My mom would have her calculator out and her coupons, having her list set down to the cent. Once in a while, she miscalculated and things had to be taken off at checkout. It had to be so humiliating. If I ever see this happen to someone now, I will have the cashier add it to my tab. That's also embarrassing. You have to get creative for entertainment. Rarely had toys, and friends definitely couldn't come over. Sugar rice was very common, so was shit on a shingle. White gravy with meat on white bread was at least once a week. Parents constantly busy with work and side jobs and being exhausted all the damn time. Hand-me-downs were new clothes. Sharing a room with multiple family members. Having to do chores without getting money or a reward. Always getting who would get money or a reward for doing that? Always getting consoles and games like 2 to 5 years after they released, and everyone was onto new shit. Two to 5. I loved when my mom would make shit on a shingle, chipped beef. Had no idea at the time it was a poor food. One time we only had rice and meat, so my mom mixed it together and called it dinosaur food, so my younger siblings would eat it. They're picky eaters, and I always told them, you can't be poor and picky. Sugar rice. I don't know what sugar rice means, and I don't want to go and look it up. My twin sister and I would make a 6 serving of rice and then pour in milk, cinnamon, and sugar. And that would be our breakfast and lunch. This is something like rice pudding. It's a Chinese thing, I think. My kids, being in a far better position in life thanks to the hard work of their parents when I introduced it to them, thought it was the weirdest thing and were not into it. Milk, cinnamon, and sugar. The cinnamon would have been weird. Oh God, hot dogs are my mortal enemies for that exact reason. Oddly though, the 10 cents per can sweet peas are the only peas I like now. $10, 10 cents. That, wow. I love me some corned beef hash. We add eggs to it and eat it as breakfast burritos. Feeds everyone in the house and is super cheap. Making your own burrito shells. We couldn't afford cable growing up, so ergo, I didn't see a lot of movies. I oft get ridiculed as a 35-year-old for not seeing them. Mighty Ducks, Sandlot, Goonies, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters all come to mind off the top of my head. And I always get the, how have you never seen these? And now it's at a point where I don't have too much of a desire to see a kids' movie for the first time from 20 plus years ago. Not really complaining because my mom did a lot to keep my childhood together, but most of my friends don't understand that not having cable cuts off access to a lot of the references they remember so fondly. Wow, that's a cultural rift. Wow, that's that's just a rift in language at that point. This is me but with music. I never had a favorite band or singer growing up because I couldn't buy the CDs, so I didn't know. I listened to the radio every once in a while, so I only really remember the really big 90s songs from my childhood. I would think that person would know all the core stuff because they'd be listening to the radio all the time. Although portable music back then was quite expensive, so maybe just when you're home sometimes. Okay. Going to the mall with friends, not buying anything, not trying anything on in case you damage it, not buying any food or snacks, and making excuses why you can't go see the movie with everyone else. Saying you left your phone at home so they don't see the old flip phone or first gen smartphone you've been passed down. Leaving quickly without saying goodbye to anyone so they don't see your mom pull up in the ancient station wagon your family's had for the last decade. Waiting to see movies on like Wednesday afternoons or whenever is that particular time. And they're old movies. Gotta walk in the center of the street when it's late at night. You order all the toppings when it's no extra price. Don't buy the dollar water from the street vendor. I don't understand what this means. 42 tall boys when it comes to price point. Double cheeseburger with mac sauce. They sell liquor if you know how to order in cash only dine-ins. Order in cash only dine-ins. You fold the you fold the bill and hold you in your fingers between the middle and ring as you high five to exchange. If they come with a crew, you bail. Driving with the check engine light on all the time. Learning skills to make do with what you have. I remember not having very much money growing up and needing to learn lots of computer and network related troubleshooting skills because I couldn't rely on my parents to simply buy a new computer or update the modem or router. We couldn't simply pay to have ISP technicians come out all the time, and my parents couldn't afford the time off to address those types of issues. Also, being afraid of going to the doctor or dentist. This wasn't stemming from being afraid of needles or getting teeth pulled, but more for a concern of whether or not something that was found would be sufficiently covered by insurance, and weighing that against whether or not you truly feel bad. I actually know a couple of people who waited in line for a dentist because there was a day when they were doing free teeth pullings. and they would rather have had the necessary they waited for it, and they would rather have had the necessary teeth pulled than have had work done on them. I remember having a really weak immune system at a certain point when I was 16 years old and not wanting to go to the doctors until the pain was too unbearable. Turned out that I had shingles. Yes, I'm aware that it's extremely uncommon for someone that young to have it, but yes, I did in fact get diagnosed with shingles, and I'm not mistaking it for something else. There was also a time where finals were approaching during my third year in my major, electrical engineering. This guy's got a good head on his shoulders. Third year in my major, when I was feeling some pain in my abdomen and reading up on the symptoms. Thank you, internet, because that's actually helped a lot of people, although it's dangerous to do. I foolishly decided that my self-diagnosis was sufficient and stayed home to tough out what I suspected to be a kidney stone, rather than see a doctor, because I figured that they'd expect me to pass it on my own anyway. I ended up passing the kidney stone halfway through finals week. As someone who grew up in an environment that disincentivized the usage of healthcare, I really have to be mindful to make full use of it now that I'm older and maintaining my health matters more. As you get older, things get a little bit harder to tolerate as well. It's crazy how much small things matter when you're poor and how little thought you are able to put into them if you're financially stable. I had shingles at 16 too. Expiration dates are more like suggestions than fact. And it's interesting how some of the language on some things doesn't say expiration, it says best before. Best before doesn't necessarily mean bad after. Goes the reasoning. Expiration dates are more like suggestions than fact. They have to set them earlier than they actually expect the food to expire so as to avoid complaint. Had a roommate throw out all of my and our other roommates' food because it was a week before the expiration date. She honestly didn't understand why we were livid. She thought she was helping. Your vegetables were wilting, so I threw them out. That's when you use them. That's when you make sure you use them all up right away. And then you have those leftovers, and then you freeze anything else you can, if you have space in the freezer. If it smells fine, it's good. Yeah? Milk actually smells and tastes bad a while before it's rotten. No? Please tell me how to tell, Please tell me how to tell, then I feel like an ad throwing away unfinished gallons because I think it's rotten. I don't. Cabbage lasts months in the fridge, surprisingly. Does it like start fermenting on its own or something? Which isn't bad. Don't ever get ice in your fast food drinks. You get less soda and you don't need your drink to stay cold if you drink it fast, since they keep it cold in the fountain dispenser. Not inviting people over to your place because it's embarrassingly shitty. Why you get to eat but your parents don't. Bologna and mustard for lunch every day. Beanie weenies. For those of you who don't know, you take beans and hot dogs and combine them. When there is a knock on the door, everyone in the house, shut up. Ooh, so debt collectors. Don't go near the cops, they are bad. Fruit juice, even the fake kind, is a luxury. Boxed mac and cheese with cut up hot dogs baked into it is a damn fine casserole. I never thought about baking it. I think I lost out on that one. I never thought about baking anything. Salvation Army sells prom dresses that are in great shape. Duct tape on shoes isn't just a fashion statement, it's a necessity. I've never seen that. Space heaters are for when your gas utility gets cut off. That electricity is expensive though. Wear shoes inside. And all the windows are open because the electric got cut off and we need the light in the house. Navigating higher education when your parents didn't go to college. So much of your success in college is based on your ability to utilize on campus resources and meeting with faculty and staff about opportunities and for assistance. That all wasn't totally obvious to me, and I feel like it really inhibited my success in school. And these are the things that the school is supposed to tell you about, but they don't really know how to do it properly. And if you don't know how to ask the right questions, and a lot of life is like that. I remember having to turn down an offer for an internship in DC because it was unpaid, and I didn't know there was an office at school that would help find funding to live there. Getting the financial aid office and the financial services office confused on a regular basis and feeling super stupid because of it is also a fond memory. I remember talking to the financial aid office during the recession, so the lines were long with kids whom formerly would have never needed support but were filing FASFA applications. I told the lady I had no support and my parents had no money. She looked straight at me as if I were lying and asked, "Well, how are you surviving?" I paused for a second and started laughing. I probably rolled my eyes to the back of my head and I told her, "Barely." I had to explain to her it is really hard. She eventually believed me. Also, receiving a letter every semester of college that I would be dropped from my classes and kicked out of the dorms if I didn't pay my tuition balance within a week. Just the simple 15K of or so. The first time I was stressed. After that, you learn. Playing outside unsupervised, without the risk of being kidnapped for ransom. Doing all your own work on your house and learning how to do this work on your own. Bathroom leak? Dad learns how to do basic plumbing. Need to do some basic wiring? Dad learns basic electrical. Need to add a new addition to the house? Dad learns basic carpentry. Need the roof reshingled? Dad learns how to reshingle a roof. Broken window? Dad learns how to install new glass or replace an entire window. That's what dads are for? By the time I was 12, I was learning how to do carpentry, mechanics, wiring, plumbing, construction, landscaping, metalwork, welding, building, renovations, and repairing. I learned how to drive a truck at 13, tractor at 14, and heavy equipment at 16. By the time I was 20, I could fix and maintain anything in my own house. By the time I was 30, I could literally build an entire house and everything that goes with it on my own. I wasn't the best, the fastest, or the most efficient, but I could do just about anything with my own hands. I grew up in a remote native community where we had no easy access to construction workers, plumbers, electricians, or mechanics. We had to learn how to do all these things on our own. It's amazing what you can do when we are forced to. When you are forced to. And thanks to the internet, a lot of these things become much easier to get access to. A lot of this knowledge, especially with streaming video. Hunger pains. Hunger pangs, yeah. Owning a single pair of shoes and not replacing them until they're full of holes. Getting excited about being able to have McDonald's. Yeah. McDonald's were for birthdays. Plane rides are an event in themselves, not some annoyance to get to the Bahamas or wherever these rich kids go on vacation. Going to McDonald's for date night. That suits are for funerals only. Crying over receiving a gift, or being embarrassed because you don't know how to act because you've never got gifts. I was in my 20s before I realized that mac and cheese was a side dish in some places. Use the oven heat after making a meal as a heater to save money during winter. Having to eat at relatives' houses since my place didn't have anything. I always felt bad about it. Sugar sandwiches or butter sugar when I could be fancy / water sugar when the bread was dry. The tiniest slices of ham between two pieces of bread because it gets you more full. Making cakes on a pan only out of flour and water. Rich kids always hated the sandwiches their parents made for them and would buy lunch from a vending machine, so they'd give me their food instead of throwing it out. Never having people over because I was too embarrassed to show them my disgusting home. Never going on school trips unless the school / parents felt bad for me since I was the only one not going. I got free school trips, yo. Having to let go of an animal because we weren't stable and couldn't afford having one anymore. Wow. Using candles when there was no money to pay the bills. Heating up water on the stove to have a bath. Giving up all the hobbies because they required money. Dungeons and Dragons is a really, really, really good investment for entertainment as well as for stimulating the mind, storytelling, spending time with friends. It doesn't require a lot of extra parts, even though there's an entire industry about fleecing people for money. And that was that has to be the most engaging part of the inexpensive entertainment that I can imagine anybody having. If they're an introvert, an indoor sort, or if they're highly social and they can role play with the role as opposed to just working with mechanics, which is what I preferred. I'm different now, but back then. Making cakes on a pan only out of flour and water. Okay, so that's hardtack, used before MREs were a thing. They'd break teeth and have to and need to have weevils pecked out of them because who gives a damn about soldiers? Now, poverty in military is also something a little bit different. Anyhow, yeah, it was soft, more like naan bread or something. Yeah, so it was because it was eaten fresh, usually hot because you were hungry right then and there. My school trips were mandatory and could get you failing a course if you didn't go to them. There was only a 3 to 4 a year and they were €5, but still mandatory. Watching your mom push food away to you or your dad even though she was still hungry. Also, your parents sacrificing their health for yours. We didn't have low-income health care, and while I always got proper medical care, my parents did without. Now, this can go a very, very long way here, so I know where this one's going. I grew up in communism, and let me tell you, Romania in the 1980s would confuse most of you. I know some of this stuff because I had a Romanian talk to me about it. You don't know the half of what happened anywhere communism has ever touched. Anywhere, because people have always, currently do, and will always die of starvation because reasons. foundationally, philosophically, on paper, it can't work. Hot water stopped running after 9 p.m. No hot water between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. the next day. Hot water between 6 to 8 a.m. and 3 to 9 p.m. on most days, except Saturday and Sunday. We did not have 2 days off every weekend. We went to school Monday through Saturday. Every second day, I would wake up at 5:45 and be in line at a shop about 500 meters away from my house to buy milk. The queue would be variable, but some days the milk would finish before I got a chance to buy it. I've actually seen photographs of bread lines. And that's the government hands out food. That's how communism works. It's pretty bad. They have so much poverty and ends up being centrally controlled with distributions. It's rationed. Shops did not have milk, butter, fresh bread, the basics. At random times in the evening, electricity would turn itself off, and sometimes it stayed off for hours. This was part of our dictator's plan to save energy. It got so bad that so the dictator of in the 1980s in Romania, oh, I know the guy's name. He's not a nice guy. It got so bad that, as a medical student, because I had to study for exams and refused to do it by candlelight, I wasn't going to fuck my eyesight for that. I made a chart with times and regions where electricity was cut for about a month. Then I would make sure not to be in that neighborhood when electricity was expected to be cut. So I ended up visiting people who had electricity so I could study. Luckily, they understood and left me alone. I saw a banana green for the first time at age 23. I sat in line for 4 hours to buy oranges outdoors in freezing temperatures. To enter the US Embassy in Romania in 1992, I had to line up for 18 hours. Ceausescu, his name. I think that's the right person. There were always a few things that signaled to me that someone was rich when I was a kid. Ordering a drink, besides water, at a restaurant. Staying at a Holiday Inn or better. Kids who could actually buy something at the store. People who had a music collection and not just songs recorded off the radio. Kids who wore expensive clothing labels, or any. Kids who had a bike with gears instead of a single-speed BMX bike like me. People who went to movies. Having a job or multiple jobs before you're an adult. This is something that 30-year-old me needs to remember from time to time, that 24-year-old me had to go through. That daily fear of, will my car die today? There were tons of problems that were going to be expensive to diagnose and fix, and I couldn't afford to keep trying to repair it. I definitely couldn't afford a new car. Luckily, my car lasted a couple more years until I could get a better job. I think this translates to kids, in that when you don't have much, your toys, clothes, and other things have to last. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. No, that's not anywhere close. Kids don't understand the idea of durability and longevity until they get a little bit older. They just know that they have what they have, and they don't really think past that. And then they start comparing themselves to other people, and they might start getting embarrassed and withdrawing, and then will do the gymnastics to not want new things, and to take care of what they have, or use it even when it's broken. It's a toy, it still looks like what it is, even though it's got a leg missing or whatever. You still play with it. Things don't get thrown out. Sometimes they don't get repaired. They just keep being used, or you don't tell your parents. Having less than 7 days worth of clothes. The generic aisle where it's nothing but white packaging with large black letters like ground coffee, laundry detergent, corn, cereal, etc. It always weirds me out that even color itself isn't for poor people at that point. For me, I remember when there was yellow packaging with black letters. No name. Did you see the number I just clicked on? One winter, we burned furniture in the fireplace for warmth. I have never said this aloud to anyone, including my family who were there. I wonder if that person's grew up in the Soviet Union. And if you think that they could just wear coats, there are people who died from the cold. And they would tear apart their wooden elevators and just use the stairs from then on, just so they could have, a couple more nights of a little bit of warmth occasionally. My dad would make this thing I called perpetual casserole. It'd start on day 1 with something like pasta and chili. Day 2 would get frozen mixed vegetables added. Day number 3 might be sliced up hot dogs. Day number 4 could be lentils. Day number 5 was more beans. Day number 6, more vegetables. Basically every day it got brought back up to its original volume and reheated. We'd then eat, and then the rest would go in the fridge. He could stretch something out 2 weeks that way. At the end, it tasted like nothing specific, but it tasted like something. Occasionally, he'd get fancy and throw gelatin in it. Then, when it got cold, he could cut pieces off like a slice off a loaf, and make a sandwich out of it, if there was bread. The Ship of Theseus. Yes. Being geographically uneducated to an embarrassing degree. We never went anywhere beyond the neighboring suburbs. I was 18 before I realized there was more than one train line. I was meeting a friend in the city and they organized to meet him at a train station that wasn't on my line, but had a similar name to one that was. I was pretty embarrassed when I realized I was in the wrong place and also stupid. When I was in Paris, we used a hand signal to let others know that the police have boarded the tram, and if you don't have a valid ticket, you should get off at the next stop. They are really intense about it, and will fine you on the spot for not having a ticket. They rarely check tickets, and the street trams don't have the automatic ticket checkers like the subway does, which is why it's so common for people to not buy one. You have to cut a slit in bologna before frying it, or it will pucker. So it will bubble up, and you can't sit it flat on whatever, on your bread. Thinking that bottled water is actually better in the first place. Or rather, I wish that it was a rich person only thing, but somehow tons of poor people fall for that ruse too. At least they aren't paying more for the water in expensive bottles. Now, the thing I noticed as an adult in my 30s is when friends who say, why don't you just put it on your credit card? Or why don't you just borrow the money from a friend/family? A, we don't have enough income to be eligible for a credit card. B, when is this magical time that we will have enough to pay the credit card or loan back? Our financial situation isn't just having a hard month, it's our lives. If I borrow $50, there is no time in the foreseeable future where I will have a spare $50 to pay it back. A sandwich for lunch consists of 1 slice of meat and 1 slice of bread folded over. Going to bed early, forcing yourself to sleep before the stomach ache started. Having to check your bank account balance before agreeing to go out. Always checking the balance just to make sure the money is still there. Living on pizza pockets, craft dinner, and canned noodles until your parents get paid next. The next payday comes and they have to pay rent, so you end up continuing to live on pizza pockets. That's a treat. Yeah, that's a treat. Finally, your parents say they have enough to get groceries, but not too much because they're behind on the power and Wi-Fi bill. Wi-Fi, phones, etc. get shut off until they can pay back what they're behind on, plus interest, and the $600 fee to get it reset up. What? You watch old movies on your old DVD player whilst having no Wi-Fi and make your younger siblings swear to not complain as to not stress your parents out. You're too afraid to ask your parents for money to go somewhere with your friends because you don't want to burden them and you feel selfish, so you don't make plans. Feeling bad about eating, drinking, etc. at your friend's house because you know how expensive it was for that fancy juice or real pizza they have. Being gobsmacked by how big your friends' houses are. Do you seriously have 2, 3, 4 bathrooms? Your bedroom is so big you have 2 living rooms? What? Parents are always working, and when they aren't, wait, having 2 bathrooms. Parents are always working, and when they aren't, good luck living with women if you have only 1 bathroom. Parents are always working, and when they aren't, they're catching up on sleep, and you start to miss them. Wow. Offering to get a job to help pay rent, but your parents tell you that they're fine, even though you know they're stressed. Babysitting your younger siblings and not getting paid because you need to help your parents while they're working. Watching your parents. Telling them you don't have any plans so that you can remain available to do babysitting so that they can go out. Watching your parents keep not getting called back for jobs and not knowing what they're going to do. Your parents pushing you really hard to study and do great so you don't end up like them. I don't think rich people in general understand the idea of not buying matching furniture or stylish furniture. But rich kids specifically don't understand that mom needs to work, so I couldn't just randomly stay after school whenever I want. Rich kids don't understand fend for yourself night for dinner. And they really don't understand what it's like to have your family choose between cable and internet. My family chose internet so that we could do school projects. That was actually a good choice. All of our furniture was either from a thrift store or a hand-me-down from friends who were getting new stuff. Matching stuff was too expensive. Never buying garbage can liners. Yeah, trash bags. Your allowance is being allowed to live in the house. Getting in trouble for an injury. And learning how to medically treat yourself because healthcare is expensive. Getting hurt and having your parents tell you that you will be fine rather than go to the emergency room for x-rays, etc. Sprained ankle. Feeling guilty when you receive presents because of your birthday or Christmas. You know your parents are low on money, but they still bought you something. Having the real brand Ritz crackers in your cabinet and nobody is eating them. That was when you knew times were good. Also, not eating school lunch so your little sister could instead save money. I took a muffin and a bottle of water to eat for a month or 2 straight. Blue-collar jobs. Nothing wrong with a blue-collar job. That's actually really good paying work these days. Having to throw your toilet paper in the waste bin because your house has pipes from the 70s. You don't have the money to tear up your whole house to replace them, or the money to move. Growing up in the foster care system, still am, I've noticed that I tend to check prices on things more often, as well as focusing more on what I exactly need and its price tag. It sounded like a normal thing to do for me, but when I went out with some friends just to find them pulling out an extra 10 or 20 just on stupid shit and not caring about what the expense is. I understand that people will be a bit ignorant with their money in this world, but that lifestyle in my eyes seems like a horrible thing to have at my age, as it doesn't show you the value of the dollar. Maybe a bit biased as I'm kind of pre-exposed to this type of shit, but I don't know. Only meal you get all day is at school. Working hard in school so you have a shot to get into a decent college. Knowing we can't afford that is one of the most painful things for your parents to say. Your mom lying about your age when you were young to get cheaper tickets or free admission. Having to nail up extra blankets on the windows so it doesn't get too cold in the wintertime. Also, butter noodles with bread, and butter is still a good meal. I don't know what butter noodles is. I'm Butter is expensive. Leaving the oven door open to heat up the house. You don't actually have to leave the oven door open, just leave it closed and the heat will radiate out slower. Broke week, the week between the bi-weekly paycheck. Kids get told, sorry, no ice cream truck. It's broke week. When I was a kid, if the bread was moldy, Mom would just pick off the green bits and say the mold was good for you anyway. I never cared, and I'm still alive. Putting a wet t-shirt in the fridge, taking it out and wearing it around the house because Mom can't afford AC in the Arizona heat. Arizona heat, wow. The air mattress isn't for fun sleepovers and guests. It's just the bed you sleep on. Getting fresh fruit for Christmas. We were too poor to buy fresh produce or juice. On Christmas morning, we would have an orange in our stockings. As we got older, and the 80s job slump had passed, more varieties of fruit appeared each Christmas. I still remember my first time touching a real pineapple. It was under the tree and had my name on it. It was the most beautiful flavor I had ever tasted. Now that I'm an adult, I buy myself a pineapple every few weeks. I feel like a king putting it on the grocery belt, and I still feel that same happiness I felt as a kid eating my first pineapple. Oof. Realizing as an adult that you were probably the pity friend. Don't get me wrong, my friends were all great, but looking back now, always has an air of why did they even bother talking to me? I even asked once. The answer was because I was nice to pretty much everyone, but it's really tainted my memories. I don't know what salary the poverty line is at, but I do know that we're poor. I pay $300 in rent. My sister-in-law pays 200. Perhaps American dollars. Just yesterday we were 100 short on the phone bill. 100. But it's always just this shame almost when you go out to eat. You know that Mom is spending her last 50 for a nice meal. When you just snack for dinner. It's basically having sleep for dinner. All our money goes towards bills, everything in the balance in Mom's account, and groceries. Evening the balance. Okay. All our money goes towards bills, evening the balance in Mom's account, and groceries. Gas tank is never full. Movies are big occasions. Child support and the tax return are huge helps. Just worrying about money all the time. It's sad. I want to leave it so much. I don't want my kids to feel this. I want to make sure they can depend on our finances. It's scary, not wanting to be trapped. Having to collect rainwater, or piss if we were desperate, to fill the cistern of the toilet to flush it. Playing with your mattress, trying to balance on it as long as possible before it bends/collapses, since you don't own any toys. Missing a ton of school because you smell terrible and don't feel like being publicly harassed for it. Basically living in an extended cab pickup truck for a few months, your parents in the front and you and your brother in the back. But it wasn't so bad because the radio was always on, Radio Disney. My folks did a damn good job of making us not feel poor as kids, but holy shit, looking back on it, I can't help but realize just how desperate of a situation we were in. Lining up to get the box of food from the government. Dad was in the army in the 70s and 80s, and they very firmly subscribed to, if we wanted you to have a family, you'd have been issued one. So wife and 2 kids on enlisted pay meant government cheese, rice and white label black print generic food. One of the first things we did every time we were moved was finding out which local churches had charity food and closed boxes too. Christmas present too. Boy, 8 to 12 were a thing too. Trying to heat the freezing bathroom with a hairdryer. Unplugging appliances you aren't using. I still do this and it still confuses my friends. Appliances which are still plugged in technically do still use power, or back then would still use a little bit of power. Is that LED lit up? Should unplug it. I know people are like that still. I had to explain that the amount of power that one of these lights uses, I can supply in a 10-cent battery for a year. Not being able to throw away gifts, not being picky at all and appreciating everything material. I sometimes have to remind myself we aren't as poor as we were. The value of dignity by going through shitty times. I go to a top university on a full scholarship because my mother and I lived on Social Security checks a large majority of the time and I was successful in school. I remember talking to a girl from across my dorm hall who asked how it was even possible to not have a driver's license and new car at 16, or not to be able to take senior pictures professionally, or not even to get a bunch of nice grad gifts. I'm almost 19, and I'm just able to afford to take my driving tests because of a paid internship I fell into this summer. In high school, my mother cried when she couldn't get expensive photos taken of me for graduating, or having to use the grad money I got from friends' parents to buy groceries for the month. I walked away from that conversation thinking really hard about how I want to raise my kids one day. I plan to be a doctor, and my boyfriend is going to be a mechanical engineer. You found a good one. Both of us came from poor families. I hope that my children will never have to worry about money growing up, but I also hope they understand the privilege they will have and be conscious of others' backgrounds. The poor kid will understand how to pack their own lunch for school. We didn't have a computer in my house till senior year of high school, about August 2004. All my paper for school up to that point were either types of my grandfather's 1940s era typewriter, or I had to stay after school to write papers. School computers. I also rarely ever was able to use internet for research, and all my sources had to come from the school library. My local library charged for library cards if you didn't live within city limits. My mom refused to pay for the library card, which would have cost about $75 a year. That's a lot. And I wouldn't have to be able to use the public library anyway. Wouldn't be able to use the public library anyway. 1, it was too far for me to walk, even from high school. 2, didn't get a car until after I was graduated from high school. And 3, public transit in my area is practically non-existent. Mom would shake the milk jug when we were running low. We thought that fluffy milk was the coolest thing in the world. Hot dogs in your macaroni and cheese was a treat. Hot dogs in your ramen, too. I didn't know about ramen noodles until a couple of years ago. Thought it was an ethnic food. Sharing bathwater. Hitchhiking well into the 2000s. Growing up in a series of apartments, not a house. Food banks. Charity-run thrift stores. going shopping in the street late at night before garbage day, especially if it was time and energy to walk to better neighborhoods. So they'd also keep a schedule of garbage days for different areas. Sharing bathwater and getting the lecture from Dad, then in his day, he had to share with 7 siblings, and I was lucky to share with just 1. Kool-Aid. My sister's boyfriend picked it up the other day at my mom's and asked what it was. My mom told him it was flavor. Mix it with water and you get kind of fake juice. He was dumbfounded. They showed him how to make it, and now he loves it. Every time he's coming over, they make it for him. I just assumed everyone had heard of Kool-Aid. Off-brand Kool-Aid. Not driving until you're an adult. I only know one person who drove fairly young. My family didn't have a car from the time I was 13 until I was almost 19. By that time, I had already moved out. It wasn't a huge deal in high school, but once I was around 18 and didn't even have a permit, people started to question why I didn't know how to drive. When I was around 15 to 17, people would be satisfied with the I can't afford driver's ed. It's $400 to $700 in my state. But once I got older, they couldn't fathom a world where my parents just couldn't teach me. I try to explain that we don't have a car. And it was actually kind of shocking how many people would suggest that I just buy one. Like, oh boy, that's the advice I'd been waiting for. Poor? Have you tried not being poor? Thanks, internet advice. That really helps. At 8, I learned quickly that payday meant food, and after that, there would be no food until the next payday. So if we didn't get very much food, I shouldn't eat it now. Understanding that and being hungry meant going to work for neighbors and walking to the store. Maybe the lake to fish. Blackberries and wild onions from the forest were great too. Crab apples. Good old days to me still. How cost affects the availability of stuff. I remember used clothes, cheap food that isn't great for you, telling what you did over summer, and finding out everyone else traveled to Disney or a resort while I was at the park. Putting water in your cereal. Eating cereal dry. Having cereal. Oatmeal. Bulk oatmeal should be the same price or cheaper than cereal and works with water. Kinda. Relationships that aren't tainted by the possibility of gold diggers. It's got to be love, because it ain't for the money. The phrase, I can't even remember the phrase. How much food and basic toiletries are important. Water's going to be off till payday. And the heat. The set of your toilet water frozen because the house is so cold. Being worried about the heat being turned off and the water in your pipes freezing and breaking. So balancing to keep the heat on for that reason. Fixing something instead of buying a new one. Even if that meant paying a couple bucks for that single part that is broken. Fixing trash picked stuff. This one is for teachers. Homework is hard to do when you don't have an internet, and when you don't have internet, the school library closes half an hour after school, and the public library in your neighborhood has 3 computers that you have to wait to use because there was always people using them. and at times a lot of people waiting to use them meant the wait can be upwards of 2 hours. As someone in school to be a teacher, this is something I absolutely will not forget, although I hate homework anyways and won't be giving much. Hey. Hunting and growing your own food. My parents told me they grew their own food growing up, not because it's healthier, but because it was so much cheaper, and because they were both from really poor immigrant families. They raised 3 pigs and 1 calf a year because it was cheaper than buying it. They hunted too, often illegally, if food got really scarce. Rich people tend to hunt and garden because it is fun, not for their literal survival. Even if you are the best behaved girl or boy, Santa sometimes forgets you. Having no bed to sleep on and no table to eat on. When I was little and my mom was fresh out of a divorce, we, my mom, my sister, and I, were all crammed into a 1-bedroom apartment, and we all slept on the floor. She would lay down a huge king-size mattress foam topper on the floor first, then spread a sheet over that before putting down the pillows and blanket, and we all slept under one blanket. Because we had no table to eat on, we also ate sitting on the floor. She didn't go out and buy beds for all of us until my sister and I were in 4th grade, because that was when she had finally saved up enough to afford beds, but still no table. Being terrified to ask somebody to the school dance because you absolutely can't afford an expensive day date and tux. Not being able to date because you can't afford anything dating related. Wearing your coat or sweater in the house during the wintertime. Wearing your coat or sweater to sleep. I asked a friend, why don't you save money? He said, because his brothers and sister would steal it from him. I honestly used to think dishwashers and drying machines were new inventions back in 2008 because I had never seen them before. That probably sounds extreme, but we used to hang our clothes out on a clothesline along with our other neighbors', and I thought that's just what everyone did everywhere. Making food out of whatever is left at home. My favorite sandwich to eat is a hard salami and yellow mustard sandwich on wheat bread, as that was all we had in the house to eat, so I put it all together. Apparently mustard with salami isn't normal from the looks I get when I eat it. It's normal. Buying shoes that are zip tied together as a pair from a wire bin in the middle of the store, and then having to reuse the old laces from your current pair. Checking the fridge and cupboards for food multiple times in the hopes that food will magically appear. Finding little ketchup packets. Not having an allowance even when doing chores. Chores have to be done. Well, when you cut your hand with a chainsaw when processing firewood, and because we couldn't afford the ER visit, waiting until Dad got home to super glue your hand back together and wrap it in paper towels and electric tape. The constant feeling of being worried that something is going to happen, because whenever something happened, it costed money. We were always so cautious about everything, because one little mistake could set us way back. Now that I have a little bit more money, I find myself looking off into the distance as I pump gas until it's full. whereas before I always had to make sure I didn't go over $20. Hmm. Everyone sleeping in one room where the Windows AC unit is in the summer. Knowing what a day bed is because your mom sleeps on it in the living room so you and your sister can have the bedroom. Not filling up the car, just putting $5, $10, whatever you have. Still feels like such a luxury to me to just fill up the tank, even though I've been doing it for 20 years. I came from poverty and now relatively very rich, so I feel like I have firsthand experience and change of my mentality. When I was a kid, I had life in me, hope, dreams, goals in life. I had reached all those goals by the time I was 23 and was earning stupid money for my age, and then fell into limbo in my mind. I all of a sudden had no targets or goals in my head left. I started questioning life and became depressed to the point of suicidal thoughts. Life no longer had much meaning. When I was poor, I appreciated the little things in life, as it was all I had. When I became rich, I didn't appreciate anything. For me, it was rationing my medicine. State insurance was available, yeah, but if you move around a lot and miss even one letter with a mail back date or one payment, you're off for 6 months. I remember my dad spending the last $80 he had on insulin, having to make one vial last 1 month. I use 3 to 4 a month now. That was 10 plus years ago. I'm not even sure how anyone would afford insulin out of pocket now. It's very expensive in the United States. I would eat cheese and bologna, no bread, for days to avoid consuming carbs. People who to avoid consuming carbs because of the diabetes. People who have never been poor always think it's wild when I talk about this. They are genuinely surprised that this happens to children in America. A question I always hated and heard an obscene amount of times after every winter vacation for school. What did you get for Christmas? I got to eat dinner that night. That's about it. Yeah. It's very expensive to not have money. Rich people can buy things outright instead of having to get a loan and pay interest. Rich people can buy the high quality products that last forever and won't need to be replaced all the time. Rich people can afford screenings and other preventative care that will save them from more expensive medical bills down the road. Poor folks can't. Parents pretending that they weren't hungry so their kids can eat and not feel guilty about it. Living in a one-bedroom home. You share the bedroom with your sister and brother, and you all sleep on a single giant mattress. Your folks sleep in the living room on the sofa, and the one roll-out bed on a wire frame. You can't even get dressed after a shower without being rushed to finish, so that the next person could either use the bathroom or be able to change in privacy. So I also grew up in a household where daily morning showers seemed foreign until I reached junior/senior year of high school. The thought that other kids acted like they actually owned their rooms and it wasn't it wasn't just a nice space their parents allowed them to sleep and study in, had an expectation of privacy, and just casually talked about leaving their room cluttered messes always seemed outlandish and bizarre to me. Especially the idea of kids who just go out and have fun, yet who don't make their beds, and have the audacity to leave dirty clothing lying about and act offended if their folks walk in on them doing something inappropriate. My mom was a maid for a while and casually mentioned cleaning the rooms of such young women who were in their teens. I'm an adult now, and to be honest, I still share a bedroom with my siblings, but at least we all have our own separate beds now. We moved to a multi-family house with more bedrooms, and lots of privacy since sister loves to go out a lot, brother only visits when he's off from college, and the bathroom is conveniently close to where I can retreat to the bedroom and dry off from a shower and take my time in getting dressed and even lotion up. I can only hope I stay true to my younger self and continue living simply and as clean as I can try. Telling your family you don't want anything for Christmas and hoping they buy the smaller kids something better instead. Shaking milk before pouring it. You don't actually need to do that for real milk. Maybe for full fat, unpasteurized milk that has lots of milk fat that separates, I don't know. But you do have to shake the jug when it's reconstituted powdered milk. I didn't grow up on powdered milk, my dad did. I picked up the habit from him. Brothers fighting over who had more cereal in their bowls as measured by getting eyes down to the table level and gauging the curvature of the bowl. Like a meniscus of cereal. And also made difficult because the dishes don't match. Playing Kirby. I don't know what that is, and I'm too scared to find out. Wrapping everything in bread because it makes food more filling. Being told not to get hurt when you go outside and play. Mom working 2 jobs, no benefits, raising 2 kids alone, and dad's barely paying support. Ain't have that insurance life. Pizza made with sliced bread, spaghetti sauce, and American cheese. That's the cheese in the plastic wrap, the per slice. Drinking from the hose while playing outside. That was the coldest, most refreshing water I've ever had. Thank goodness we were vaccinated. Not filling up your gas tank all the way, only putting $10, $20 at a time because you only have so much money left over at the end of the week. A lot of people close to me don't understand it, saying, it's not like you're saving money. Choosing from a menu by suggesting to your parents that a couple of things look good and then watching their reactions as they look up the price. Not leaving food behind. I either force myself to eat everything or pack it and eat it later because growing up poor, you didn't waste food. My friends who grow up well off and throw sway. My friends who grew up well off. Sorry, I can't understand that. When I go out to eat, I like to eat just half and then freeze the rest when I get home. If it's something like pasta, something else that freezes as well. Then I take it to work for lunch a few days later and I feel fancy about having a restaurant lunch at work. Now that I'm well off, I'm fat because I always finish everything. Hanging your jeans over the door of the oven to dry them because the washer is broke. Bonus points because when the door is swung halfway open, it doubles as a heating source when it's cold out. Not having any idea what goes on inside a dentist's office. Tortillas with lemon squirted into it and rolled up into a taco. I used to look forward to that as a kid. Now I understand it was survival food. The real luxury would be tacos filled with sour cream and salt. Having your parents appropriate most of your birthday money from some relatives and advising you to buy clothes with it. Not paying for all your groceries at the self-checkout registers in Walmart. Scanning one item for every 4 to 5 you bag. Even just the self-checkout lines in Walmart would probably still apply. Actually, just Walmart. You can't do that because of the way the bags. So maybe it's that Walmart at that location at that time, many moons ago. Using a sideways broom instead of a vacuum cleaner. Like on carpet, I guess. White bread, toaster oven pizzas. Splitting packs of ramen with my mom. Eating rolled up pieces of bologna for dinner. Never having tried the popular branded cereals. Only having Lunchables on special occasions, etc. I frequently buy certain things now that I'm an adult just because I always wanted them as a kid and I couldn't afford them. So here I am, 20 years old, buying kids' cuisines for dinner. Driving to a place far away instead of flying. Public transport. The immense joy of food. The immense joy when you get a food you love from the food bank. Layaway. Giant blocks of government cheese. That's actually a thing in the United States. I don't know anything about it. Silver cans labeled pork that contained mystery chunks of protein floating in water and fat dots that looked like spider eggs. Tons of cans of hominy grits for some reason and powdered milk. Getting clothes by being I'm not reading that because I can't understand. My wife found out that when her parents took she and her brother out for ice cream cones as a once a week treat, the reason that her parents didn't eat ice cream wasn't because they like it. Wasn't because they didn't like it. They only had enough money for 2 cones. Her parents also skipped dinner for the same reason. Not enough money for food for 4. But the kids never went hungry. And sometimes the joy of your children is enough to keep you going. Instead of bragging about how much instead of bragging about how much you spent on something, bragging about how much you saved on it. I remember sitting with my mom and aunts at the dinner table at holiday meals, which they helped kick in for, and they would gossip and brag about how little they paid for something, or what local grocery store had the best sale on whatever item at the moment. It definitely made me grow up to develop flagrant distaste for absurdly priced brand named items, especially clothes, and the dumbasses who spend far too much money on them. Sneaking into the kitchen, heart pounding, slowly opening the cupboard in the dark to grab the peanut butter and a knife and the tortillas, because we don't use them as often as bread. Mom won't notice them slowly deplete. And tiptoe run back to your room or bathroom to make a peanut butter tortilla because supper wasn't enough. Or it was fend for yourself day. And you played around rather than get food until everyone was asleep. Checking the small price per ounce on the price tag at the grocery store to make sure whatever we bought was the smartest buy. That's really difficult math, embarrassingly enough, because they'll be in different units and things are confusing, and they won't always give those numbers properly. When you had to wear your older brother's hand-me-downs, I'm a girl. Eating rice went with every meal when there was food because we couldn't afford much else. Oh, eating rice with every meal when there was food because we couldn't afford much else. Having the pressure of an adult when you're a teenager working a minimum wage job to help your mom make ends meet because your wealthier extended family doesn't want anything to do with you. Saving water in the bathtub because you know that they'll cut the water and you still need to go to the bathroom when you can't hold it in any longer. Sleeping in the car with your mom because your family only offered to give you a couch. My mom worked her ass off to raise 3 kids, and now that we're all adults, we take care of her. I worked my ass off, took so much shit in life from my family, and was able to buy my mom a new car. I grew up poor as hell, but I wouldn't change it. Never got birthday or Christmas gifts growing up. Didn't matter too much to me because I didn't want to put pressure on my parents to buy something that wasn't essential. Again, the guilt. I cried when a friend's mom once gave me $20. My family used to be dirt poor, not being able to afford to have a good lunch, bread and cheese sandwich for the win. Also, you can buy oatmeal for ridiculously cheap. Rice too. Can't stand oatmeal anymore. Not being able to buy things that you want most of the time. I'm very fortunate to have a family that has access to technology. We aren't very high tech here. Maybe I'm the only one in the household who knows how to text and look things up on Google. But we have upper class aunts, uncles, and cousins. To be honest, I think they have taught their children well about their privileges. They know that electronics are just items. They even buy me and my sister brand new Abercrombie and Fitch and Gap jackets. By the way, all my jackets are from my aunts and uncles. I'm on an iPad right now, which eight saved up for 5 years worth of Amazon gift cards. Don't understand. Maybe a rich kid would understand, but sorry if I had to go a little off topic. Really sure I understand. Having having to have your life organized by the time you're 15, having a job since you were 14, and having air for dinner. Living with broken windows, unhinged doors, broken lights, fans, etc., because repairing them would be too expensive. Never inviting people over or having a sleepover at your house because there wasn't enough space or beds in the house and it was too trashed/shitty in general. Getting excited when your parent takes you to the thrift store to pick out one or two clothing items once a year because buying new clothes was never an option. Only drinking water on the rare occasion you went out to eat. Bug problems. No cable TV meant being made fun of for not being caught up on the latest shows and movies, as well as for not understanding references to the movies everyone else was raised on. Trashy car. Ceiling liner had peeled off, one window wouldn't close all the way, so the 2-inch tall crack had to be covered with duct tape so bugs wouldn't crawl in. Going hungry at night because there wasn't any food in the fridge. Having to use decade-old phones because the newest models were way too expensive. Couldn't afford braces, so the misaligned crookedness of my teeth was ignored and got worse. People that can't afford braces are incredibly privileged. Birthday parties didn't exist. Presents were from grandparents only because parents couldn't afford. Not knowing what it's like to fly in a plane. That notebook. I'm pretty sure every poor person knows what I'm talking about. Your parent had a notebook where they wrote down and planned their finances extensively, down to every last expense and item. And possibly the worst, hearing your parent cry over finances late at night when they think you're asleep. I'm not even reading things about their pet dog. That's I know how depressing that's going to get. Being poor means you don't have enough money for a car and things cars need. To take a bath, we used old plastic bath tube from when my oldest brother was born. We needed to warm 4 pots of water. You were never clean with that. All the sweat stayed on you. No toilet in the apartment. It was on a staircase. No baking oven. Pasta, yard sandwiches, meat was exclusive to holidays. Poland, post-communist. Fighting over who got the last bowl of the good cereal. Whoever touched the box first was the winner. And you wouldn't get good cereal again until the first of next month, which was suspiciously when all the shopping took place. How about having to put your groceries back because the store no longer accepted food stamps? Getting excited when you get new pillows or blankets. Having to DIY dog toys, not because it's fun, because it's the only way. Having to double buckle every day. I don't understand. Home done haircuts. Not having enough money to buy my 1-year-old brother diapers and having to try our hardest to carefully clean the piss off the diaper, dry them, and reuse them. How to haggle at the flea market. Picking berries in the summer and giving the money to our parents to help pay bills. We never really heard music when I was a kid. We couldn't afford a stereo, and we definitely didn't spend money on CDs or cassettes. I didn't have my first CD until I was 18. Enlisting in the military. Mastering the art of bug slaughter. Not being able to fix your car up right away even with insurance money, aka bill/credit card payment money. Not being financially set up when you move out because you had to help out around the house. Going out for drinks and being the designated driver because buying drinks isn't a good financial decision. Repairing your own clothing or wearing it despite a rip or bleach stain, it being a little too small. 4. Reselling old things on eBay, not holding on to things because you're too lazy to sell them. Being uber money conscious at an age where everyone has fun and makes mistakes. Shopping at a grocery store outlet /Winco/off-brand grocery stores your whole life. I've had friends who didn't know these stores exist. Making trips to multiple grocery stores because things are cheaper at different stores. Guarding name brand things like gold because they were on sale and you could finally afford real Sprite or a pint of Halo Top. Doing things like road trips, going out to eat, going on vacation, or playing mini golf once a year, not once a week. Higher playgrounds. Splitting firewood to stay warm. How glad a family can talk to each other and not be a fight. Looking at tuition costs for schools. Of course. I'm probably going to start getting into duplicates, because a lot of these are more recent and people might have read through all of them and not added anything newer. And this is getting very, very difficult. Okay, I had sorted this by oldest, and maybe I'm going to sort this by best just to see what happens. I think that's it. I think I've read the good ones, and I think I need to stop now. So maybe this could have been done more fancy, but you got a human.